The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Oak Ridge Academy's grand auditorium, casting long beams of gold across the polished stage floor. It was audition day for the school's annual talent showcase, an event treated with the pomp and prestige of a Broadway debut. The air inside buzzed with nerves and excitement as students lined up backstage, clutching violins, sheet music, or adjusting the straps on expensive guitars that looked like they had never seen a scratch. Mr. Alden, Ms. Rivera, and Mr. Cho, the school's 3 senior music instructors, stood near the stage, clipboards in hand, their expressions already laced with exhaustion. It was only mid-morning, and they had seen 12 performances in a row. All technically sound, none inspiring. "I swear, Mr. Alden muttered under his breath, if I hear one more soulless rendition of Ed Sheeran, I might combust." Ms. Rivera didn't look up from her clipboard. "We're not cultivating musicians anymore. Just influencers in training." Mr. Cho chuckled dryly, nodding toward the next student nervously tuning a sleek electric guitar. "Let's get through this next one before I start spouting Mozart quotes and crying into my latte." As they prepared for the next act, a small figure at the end of the line caught Ms. Rivera's eye, a girl, thin-framed, probably 15 or 16, standing very still and holding what looked like a beat-up acoustic guitar with chipped wood and one visibly missing string. Her hoodie was too big, the sleeves hanging slightly over her hands. Her jeans were faded, fraying at the cuffs, and her sneakers looked like they had survived more than one rainy season. "That her?" Rivera asked, pointing with her chin. Mr. Alden followed her gaze and raised an eyebrow. "Who's that?" "She signed up last minute," Rivera said. "Elena Martinez. No class listing for music. I think she's not even in the arts program." Mr. Cho flipped through a page on his clipboard. "Wait, Martinez, isn't her mom the head custodian?" "Exactly," Rivera said with a smirk. "This should be entertaining." Mr. Alden stifled a laugh. "A cleaner's kid playing a guitar with 5 strings. You can't make this stuff up." The 3 shared a look, the kind of glance teachers pass when they've already decided what to expect. Pity, dismissal, amusement. "Elena Martinez," Mr. Cho called. The girl nodded quietly and stepped forward. The auditorium lights weren't yet focused on the stage, so the mood felt more like a rehearsal than a performance. She didn't look up, just walked toward center stage and adjusted the strap on her guitar. "Do you have music?" Ms. Rivera asked. "No," Elena said softly. "You'll be playing from memory?" Mr. Alden asked, unable to hide the disbelief in his tone. She nodded again. Her fingers gently adjusted the tuning pegs, despite the missing string. The instructors leaned forward just slightly, more curious now. Maybe they expected something awkward. A clumsy attempt, something to roll their eyes at later. "Go ahead, Mr. Cho said, scribbling something on his clipboard before Elena had even started. Elena took a deep breath. Her small hand steadied the guitar. There was a moment, a pause where time seemed to hold its breath, and then, with a single stroke of her hand, she played the first note. The sound was unexpectedly full. A low, resonant E vibrated through the space. It caught attention, not because it was loud, but because it was deliberate. Confident, she followed it with a quick flourish, 3 notes in perfect rhythm, then a syncopated slide into a cascading melody. Her left hand moved across the fretboard with natural ease, her fingers nimble, fluid. The imperfections of the guitar didn't seem to matter. She wasn't fighting the instrument. She was coaxing music out of it as if it were an extension of herself. The smirks vanished. Mr. Alden's pen stopped mid-note. Ms. Rivera's mouth opened slightly, but no words came. Mr. Cho slowly lowered his clipboard. Elena's playing built in emotion. She had chosen a flamenco-style piece, something rarely attempted by students, let alone self-taught ones. Her strumming alternated with finger-picking patterns so complex it would have challenged half the senior class. All around the auditorium, silence fell. Even the students waiting in line backstage leaned forward, sensing that something strange and electric was happening. And Elena, she didn't look up once. Her eyes were closed, her expression calm, lost in the rhythm and pulse of the music flowing through her. What had started as a joke for the instructors now felt like something else entirely. Something they hadn't expected, and something they definitely weren't ready for. The last note hung in the air, vibrating softly before fading into complete silence. For a moment, the world seemed suspended, as though time itself had paused to listen. Elena stood motionless at center stage, her fingers resting gently on the neck of the guitar. Her head was still slightly bowed, dark hair falling over her eyes. She didn't smile. She didn't look for approval. She simply waited, as if the music had spoken for her and there was nothing more to say. No one clapped, not out of rudeness, but because no one could move. Mr. Alden stared straight ahead, his lips parted. His fingers, so quick earlier to scribble critiques, now gripped his pen like it might fall. He had spent years teaching theory, performance, and technique. Yet nothing he had seen in a classroom or a textbook explained what he had just witnessed. Ms. Rivera blinked rapidly, trying to process the impossible. She had been ready to laugh, ready to roll her eyes and write some dismissive note about overreaching. Instead, her pen had slipped from her hand halfway through Alina's performance, unnoticed until it clattered softly to the floor. Mr. Cho, always the calmest of the trio, had leaned forward in his chair somewhere in the middle of the piece. Now he sat back slowly, exhaling a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes, usually cool and analytical, were now focused and intense. Backstage, the other students stood in stunned silence. Some were still holding their instruments mid-tune, others clutching lyric sheets or nervously bouncing on their heels just minutes earlier. Now, they were statues, transfixed by a girl none of them had spoken to before today. The auditorium, once buzzing with movement and murmurs, had transformed into something sacred. Then, Elena moved. She gave a small nod toward the back of the room and turned to leave, walking slowly but purposefully toward the wings. No applause followed her steps. The silence itself had become an echo of respect. Just as she reached the edge of the stage, Mr. Alden stood up abruptly. "Wait," he said, his voice louder than he intended. Elena stopped and turned her head slightly, just enough to glance at him. Mr. Cho was next to speak, his tone gentler but just as urgent. "Come back for a moment, please." Elena turned fully, expression unreadable. Her eyes flicked between the three instructors, unsure what they wanted now. "Where did you learn that?" Ms. Rivera asked, the edge of disbelief still in her voice. "That piece, that style, did someone teach you?" Elena hesitated for a second. "My uncle," she said finally. "He used to play on the streets in Oaxaca. When I was little, he taught me how to listen. How to feel the strings before you even play." "You've had no formal training?" Mr. Cho asked. Elena shook her head. "No lessons, no reading music. I watch videos, I listen, I practice when I can, after school. When my mom's working." There was another pause, but this one was different, charged, not stunned. The instructors were processing something heavier now, the realization that they had almost dismissed her. Almost laughed her off the stage. And yet here she was, effortlessly delivering a performance more authentic and technically impressive than anything they'd seen that day, or even that year. Ms. Rivera exchanged a glance with Mr. Alden, who gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. Mr. Cho cleared his throat. "Elena, we'd like you to perform at the showcase." She blinked, caught off guard. "In fact," he continued, "if you're willing, we'd like to discuss offering you private lessons. A scholarship, if we can arrange it." In the wings, someone gasped. A few of the students backstage began whispering. Elena didn't move. For the first time, a flicker of emotion crossed her face, not pride, not surprise, but something quieter. Something like relief, or perhaps permission. She turned her head toward the rear exit of the auditorium. Standing there, half shadowed by the doorframe, was her mother, still in her work uniform, a mop in one hand, the other pressed to her mouth in disbelief. Elena met her mother's eyes, and for the first time that morning, she smiled.